The sun beat down relentlessly on the crowded streets of the city, where the hum of traffic blended with the chatter of people and the distant clatter of pots and pans from roadside food stalls. Among them, a slender man in his early 30s, crouched beside a battered pressure cooker. His clothes, faded and patched in several places, told of a life lived on the margins. Yet the way he stirred his ingredients, ginger, garlic, lentils, and spices, betrayed a devotion and focus that was unmistakably pure. His name was Rafiq. Each day, Rafiq set up his tiny food stall on the same dusty corner of the marketplace. He owned nothing but the old cooker, a few utensils, and a heart full of dreams. With no family left and no formal training, he had learned to cook by watching others and trusting his instincts. The aroma that rose from his humble pot would often catch the attention of passers-by, and those who dared to taste his food never left disappointed. But not everyone saw the value in his efforts. One sweltering afternoon, as Rafiq carefully measured turmeric into his bubbling pot, a shiny black car pulled up a few feet away. From it stepped a well-dressed woman with perfectly styled hair and sunglasses that likely cost more than Rafiq earned in a month. Her name was Angela Blake, a food critic and influencer, with thousands of followers on social media. She had come to the market with a friend, hoping to sample some authentic street food for her latest blog post. Angela's friend spotted Rafiq's stall and suggested trying something different. Different? Angela scoffed, eyeing the rusting pressure cooker with disdain. That thing looks like it could explode any second. What could he possibly make in that? Exploding stew? The two women burst into laughter. Rafiq looked up, heard the words, and caught their eyes. He smiled, not with sarcasm, but with grace. "Would you like to try a spoon?" he asked kindly. Angela waved her hand dismissively. "No thanks, I'm not looking for a stomach infection today." Her words stung, but Rafiq didn't let them show. He simply turned back to his cooker, adding a sprinkle of fresh coriander and a touch of lemon juice, his signature finish. That day, he served 12 customers, including a kind old woman who insisted on paying double because people like you make the world a little warmer. But the incident with Angela haunted him that night as he lay on his thin mattress under a corrugated roof. He didn't wish her ill. He just wished people like her could see beyond appearances. 3 weeks passed. The city moved forward in its chaotic rhythm. Angela continued posting polished photos of gourmet meals while Rafiq continued showing up every morning with his pressure cooker and his unmatched devotion. What neither of them knew was that change was brewing, slowly, like the dishes Rafiq prepared with care. One evening, a man in his 50s wearing a worn but clean suit stopped by Rafiq's stall just as he was closing. The man, whose name was Thomas Green, was the owner of a mid-tier restaurant chain that had once flourished but was now struggling to survive. He had been told by a friend about a magical lentil curry being served at a food stall in the old marketplace. Out of curiosity, and perhaps desperation, he came to see for himself. Rafiq welcomed him with the same soft-spoken warmth he gave everyone. He served a small bowl of curry with homemade bread and waited. Thomas took one bite, then another. He said nothing for a full minute, just kept eating slowly, methodically. "This is the best thing I've tasted in years," he finally said. Rafiq smiled shyly. "Thank you, sir. It's just something I learned by watching others. Nothing fancy." Thomas wiped his mouth and asked to sit for a moment. That moment turned into an hour-long conversation where Rafiq spoke of his life, his love for cooking, and his belief that food could bring people together. Thomas listened intently. A week later, Rafiq received a formal invitation. Thomas wanted him to be the head chef of a new restaurant concept, one that offered affordable gourmet meals with heart, made from simple ingredients and prepared with soul. He would receive training, resources, and eventually, ownership. Thomas believed in investing in people, not just ideas. At first, Rafiq hesitated. The streets were all he'd known. But with a deep breath and the memory of his mother whispering, "Never fear kindness, it will always return to you," he accepted. The restaurant, Soulfire, open to modest fanfare but enormous love. Within 2 weeks, customers were lining up outside. The food was vibrant, deeply flavored, and rooted in tradition, yet it carried the unmistakable flair of a man who cooked with heart. News spread quickly, and local food bloggers began raving about the humble chef with the golden ladle. 3 weeks to the day after Angela had laughed at Rafik and his pressure cooker, she found herself browsing social media and reading about the buzz around Soulfire. The photos looked stunning. Curious and perhaps a little intrigued by the sudden rise of this unknown chef, she made a reservation. When she entered the restaurant, she didn't immediately recognize Rafik. He wore a clean chef's coat, his hair neatly tied back, but his eyes were the same, gentle, kind, and calm. Angela was led to her table, and soon a server brought out a tasting platter. The first bite stunned her. The flavor was bold, yet comforting, a perfect balance of spices and warmth. She asked to meet the chef. When Rafik came out and introduced himself, she froze. The memory hit her hard. The dusty street corner, the pressure cooker, the mocking laughter. "I think we've met before," she said quietly, ashamed. Rafik nodded, offering a kind smile. "Yes, but today, I'm just glad you're here." Angela couldn't find words. She had spent her career chasing perfection plated on porcelain, yet here was a man who had created something extraordinary from so little. She didn't apologize, not in words. But the tears that formed in her eyes and the silent handshake she offered said what words could not. In the months that followed, Soulfire became more than a restaurant. It became a symbol. Rafik made it a point to hire underprivileged youth, training them not just in cooking, but in confidence. He partnered with shelters to donate meals every night. His menu didn't just list ingredients, it told stories of resilience, of community, and of humanity. And Angela? She wrote a piece titled "The Man with the Pressure Cooker," a heartfelt apology wrapped in admiration. It went viral, not because it was sensational, but because it was sincere. She began using her platform to highlight street vendors, small cooks, and overlooked culinary artists across the country. Her transformation was just as moving as Rafik's. One evening, Rafik stood at the back of his bustling kitchen watching his teamwork. The clatter of pans now a comforting rhythm. The restaurant was full, the laughter of guests echoing through the space like music. He closed his eyes for a moment and remembered the street corner, the sting of mockery, and the warmth of lentils in a battered cooker. It was not revenge that had brought him here. It was kindness. It was his unshaken belief that dignity does not wear designer clothes and greatness does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes, it whistles quietly through the steam of a pressure cooker on a hot city afternoon. And in that truth, Rafik had found everything he ever dreamed of, served not with pride but with love. As weeks turned into months, Soulfire continued to thrive, not just as a business but as a living, breathing testament to the human spirit. Customers from all over the city, and even tourists from abroad, began to seek out the little restaurant with the big heart. People didn't just come for the food, they came for the story, the atmosphere, and the warmth that seemed to wrap around them the moment they stepped inside. Every evening, Rafik took time to greet guests at their tables. He didn't believe in hiding behind kitchen doors or fame. He still treated everyone the same way he did on the street corner, like a guest in his home. Children were given complimentary sweets made from his grandmother's old recipes, and elderly guests always left with an extra parcel of food for later, whether they asked for it or not. Rafik also started a weekend program where he cooked alongside children from low-income neighborhoods, teaching them the basics of cooking and the deeper values of respect, hard work, and humility. The sessions weren't just about food, they were about nurturing hope. One Saturday morning during one of these sessions, a small girl named Lila looked up at him with wide eyes and asked, "Chef Rafik, were you always rich?" He paused, smiled, and knelt beside her. "No," he said gently. "But I've always been rich in something that matters more, hope and kindness. If you have that, little one, You're already wealthy. Meanwhile, Thomas Green, the man who had believed in Rafiq when no one else did, sat quietly in the corner, watching his investment bloom into something far beyond his expectations. One day he pulled Rafiq aside and handed him a legal folder. "What's this?" Rafiq asked. Thomas looked him in the eyes. "The final transfer papers. Soulfire is officially yours now. You've earned every bit of it." Rafiq stared at the folder, emotions washing over him like waves. He had worked countless hours, faced doubts, judgments, and even hunger. But he had never stopped believing in the power of good food and a good heart. And now, he owned the very dream he once thought was unreachable. Later that evening, after the dinner rush, Rafiq walked alone through the now quiet dining room. The soft glow of the pendant lights shimmered across the wooden tables. He ran, his fingers gently over one of the chairs, remembering how not long ago he had once sat on a plastic crate, cooking lentils for a few coins. He stepped outside and walked to that same dusty street corner where it had all begun. The market was quieter now, the stalls mostly closed, and the old wall where he had leaned his pressure cooker still stood, worn but firm. Rafiq sat down for a moment, breathing in the warm night air. He didn't miss the struggle, but he honored it. Suddenly, a voice spoke behind him. "I wasn't sure I'd find you here." He turned and saw Angela standing there, this time without the makeup, the sunglasses, or the pretense. Just her, vulnerable and real. "I thought you might like this back," she said, holding something wrapped in a small cloth. Rafiq took it gently and unwrapped it. It was a restored version of his old pressure cooker. "I had it cleaned and repaired," Angela said. "I don't know if it still works, but it seemed wrong to throw it away. It started something incredible." Rafiq looked at it, eyes misting. He hadn't seen it since the day he first walked into Thomas's kitchen. "Thank you," he whispered. Angela sat beside him on the sidewalk. They didn't speak for a while. They just watched the stars peek through the city haze, sharing a silence filled with unspoken apologies, forgiveness, and the gentle rhythm of understanding. Eventually, Angela turned to him. "You've changed lives, Rafiq, including mine." He smiled. "I didn't set out to. I just wanted to cook something good." "That's the thing about goodness," she said. "It spreads whether you mean for it to or not." The next morning, Rafiq placed the old pressure cooker on a shelf in the restaurant right at the entrance. Beneath it, he placed a small plaque that read, "This is where the story began." A reminder that dreams can grow in the humblest of places. Soulfire continued to grow, not just in size but in soul. More branches opened in other neighborhoods, each carrying the same mission: to serve food with dignity, offer jobs to those often overlooked, and build a community around kindness. Former street vendors, single mothers, orphans, and young dreamers became the new chefs and managers under Rafiq's guidance. Angela, too, transformed. She started a new video series, Food with Heart, which focused on telling the stories of unsung culinary heroes around the world. Her first episode featured Rafiq, and the video was watched by millions. In it, she ended with a message. "We often chase shiny things, gourmet plates, and picture-perfect bites. But true flavor comes from struggle, from hope, and from humanity." Rafiq reminded me of that. I hope he reminds you too. For Rafiq, success was never about fame or fortune. It was about the ability to offer someone a warm meal, a listening ear, and a second chance. And he never forgot what it felt like to be laughed at, dismissed, and doubted. That memory didn't make him bitter. It made him kinder. In the end, it wasn't a pressure cooker that changed his life. It was what he put into it: patience, passion, and purpose. And just like the meals he crafted, life rewarded him with something deeply nourishing, a legacy built on love. And somewhere, in a bustling kitchen filled with laughter, the scent of cumin and coriander danced once more through the air, carrying with it a message the whole world needed to hear. Kindness always finds its way back. Months rolled by, and Soulfire's name reached even greater heights. Magazines began listing it as one of the top restaurants redefining modern dining through compassion and sustainability. But no matter how popular it became, Rafiq kept his feet firmly on the ground. He made sure every branch of Soulfire had a kindness corner, a small but cozy space where anyone, regardless of money, could sit and eat for free. No questions asked. These spaces became sanctuaries for struggling students, homeless individuals, elderly people with fixed incomes, and single parents juggling too much. The meals weren't leftovers or lesser versions. They were the same quality food everyone else was served. That was important to Rafiq. Dignity was non-negotiable. Every month he would personally visit one of the kindness corners and eat with the people there. He never announced his visits. He didn't take photos. He just sat, listened to stories, shared a meal, and quietly slipped away. One rainy evening, as Rafiq served hot soup to a young man drenched from the storm, he noticed a familiar look in his eyes, tired, but still hopeful. Just like his own reflection years ago. The young man hesitated before eating, clearly overwhelmed. "You don't have to say anything," Rafiq said gently. "Just eat." The young man eventually spoke between spoonfuls. "I was fired last week. Haven't eaten since yesterday. I didn't expect this kind of place to help someone like me." Rafiq smiled. "I didn't expect someone like me to be running a place like this either." They both laughed softly. Moments like these reminded Rafiq why he started. They refueled him. Meanwhile, Angela's work began changing lives too. Through her new series, she had uncovered dozens of street vendors and home cooks with remarkable talent and stories. She used her platform not just to showcase food, but to promote social initiatives, raise funds, and help struggling cooks get licenses, better equipment, and visibility. One day, during a live interview on a major American talk show, she was asked, "What shifted your career so drastically?" Angela didn't hesitate. "I laughed at a man once, a poor man cooking from a broken pressure cooker on the street. I mocked him because I couldn't see past the surface. 3 weeks later, he became the owner of the most soulful restaurant I've ever been to. He didn't just feed me food, he fed me humility. That man, Rafiq, changed everything I thought I knew about success, worth, and humanity." The host leaned in. "Do you keep in touch?" Angela nodded. "He's a friend, a mentor even, and the heart behind every story I now tell." Later that year, Soulfire was nominated for a Global Humanitarian Award for its impact on poverty, reduction, and community development through food. Rafiq was invited to speak at the ceremony, held in New York City. He had never traveled outside his home country before. His hands trembled as he stood backstage, watching CEOs, celebrities, and world leaders in the audience. When his name was called, the applause was thunderous. Rafiq stepped up to the podium, his humble demeanor untouched by the grandeur of the moment. He wore the same chef's coat he always did, clean, simple, and proudly worn. He paused, looking out over the crowd. "I am not a man of fancy words," he began, "but I am a man of flavors. Flavors that tell stories. Stories of hardship, hope, and heart. I stand here today not because I chased success, but because I chose kindness. I chose to believe that no act of love, however small, goes unnoticed." He continued, voice steady and sincere. "I was mocked, overlooked, and dismissed, but I wasn't angry. I kept stirring my pot because I believe that dignity does not come from wealth or applause. It comes from how you treat people. That is the soul behind Soulfire." He closed with a smile. "To anyone out there who feels invisible, keep cooking your dreams. The world will taste them eventually." The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Later that night, as he sat in his hotel room overlooking the city skyline, Rafiq quietly opened his suitcase. Inside, wrapped in cloth, was the old pressure cooker. He set it on the table next to his award and whispered, "We made it." Back home, Soulfire continued to bloom. New locations opened in cities across continents. Each one carried not just recipes, but Rafiq's philosophy: cook with heart, serve with humility, and lead with love. Years passed. Rafiq never stopped working with his hands, never stopped meeting new faces, and never stopped making sure that no one who came to his door left hungry or unseen. And the pressure cooker, it stayed with him always, sometimes in his office, sometimes on display, and sometimes in the kitchen, still in use when he wanted to remember where he came from. To the staff, it was a relic. To Rafiq, it was a friend. Angela's series went global, and she remained a regular at Soulfire, often coming by unannounced, not as a critic but as someone who had once been lost and found her way back through the generosity of a street cook. Together they would sometimes sit quietly at the end of the night sipping tea, watching the last few lights flicker in the kitchen. No headlines, no cameras, just a shared understanding. In the end, Rafiq's legacy was not just in the restaurants or awards. It was in the people he touched, the strangers he fed, the kindness he offered when no one was watching. And in a world often driven by speed, wealth, and fame, his story served as a gentle, lingering reminder. Sometimes, the slowest meals feed the deepest hunger. Sometimes the humblest hands build the most beautiful homes. And sometimes all it takes is a pressure cooker, a bit of hope, and an unwavering belief in the goodness of people to change the world, one dish at a time.